What's up guys, iHeartPie here, and we are going to be going through a BapBap tier list. We're going to be judging each character on how hard they can slap you across the map. We're going to be judging each character on 4 separate categories: early game power, late game power, escape chase potential, and dueling power. Early game power is if they don't have their core build, how strong are they? Late game power is if they get their core build, how strong are they? Escape chase potential is how good they are at getting away as well as securing kills. And finally, dueling power is if you are left to do a 1 versus 1. How good are you in that situation? Now, when it comes to tier list, there's one thing I believe in, and that is you need to know the person making the tier list. After all, a ranged character might rank assassins higher, assassins might rank tanks higher, etc, etc. As for me, I'm a Kitsu and Froggy main. And in terms of credentials, I placed first in the last Trios playtest, which was like 2 weeks ago, and I placed 14th in the ranked weekend. I'll use all this experience to try to pull together a tier list for you guys, judging based on my experience climbing the ladder, as well as what some of the top players are using. And of course, before we begin, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. I made a 40-minute version of this tier list before, but I'm like, you know what? I think you guys want something a little bit more concise. You guys want something a little bit more well-produced. So I went back and made this shorter version for you guys, so hopefully you guys enjoy it. Without further ado, let's jump right in. First, we have Kitsu. Now, Kitsu is a ranged sniper character, pretty hard to play. Speaking as someone who mains her, her early game is by far the weakest out of all the characters. If you find a Kitsu early game, you can pretty much jump her, and if she doesn't have any teammates around, or if she doesn't have any walls to immediately hop, and you don't misplay, usually you'll win against a Kitsu. Her early game is really tragic. Her farming is really sad. She only does 200 damage autos on one person, and they're slow, and they're easy to miss. Her Q only does up to 192 damage, which is really not good. So her early game is gonna suffer, but once she gets her full build, she is probably the strongest character in the entire game, in my personal opinion. She has such long range, she can poke you out before you even get close to her. When she has a gold sword, she does 500 damage per autos. That's not including crits, and that does not include the multiple shots you can get out with a attack speed. So definitely very powerful late game. You have to pay a lot of attention playing against her, because one straight arrow will chunk you a lot of HP. On top of that, her ultimate is very good for late game initiation, where people are going to be staying far away from each other, trying to go for a little bit of poking. Her ultimate is incredible for starting a fight, because it just nukes an incredible amount of damage. So her late game is incredibly strong, but obviously, with her weaker early game, she might get jumped early, and you might never see her in the late game at all. Now, in terms of escape and chase, I give her a 3 out of 5. Her chase is not fantastic simply because she requires the person to be in line of sight. If they turn around a corner or whatever, it becomes much harder for you to hit them with a Q or an ultimate or whatever. But she does have an iframe and a wall hop and CC on the jump, which is incredible. The CC will help you interrupt people who have charge ups, like for example, Chuck jumps on you and then tries to ultimate. Your jump away will interrupt that. She has a wall hop to get away from some of the people who can't wall hop. She has an iframe to get out of CC combos. All of this is very good. This is a very good core ability and should be able to get you out of most situations. She also has a Q that is good for slowing people down. You have to place it very carefully because it is very small, but it is very good for slowing people down. It's probably not smart to use your E while running away, since it has a charge time and it's very easy to miss and it's very easy to dodge. People will most likely be coming up to you during the time you're charging it, so probably not recommended. Regardless though, her escape potential is pretty good. Her chase potential pretty much boils down to if you manage to snipe someone across the wall with your E. So 3 out of 5, pretty reasonable. And finally, for dueling power, I give her a 3.5 out of 5. It really depends on your strength at the time. Remember the early game and late game curve there. But Kitsu only feels weak against the 3 assassins if they manage to get a jump on her before she pokes them down. Zook and Kiddo are largely skill matchups, really depends on whether you land your ultimate or not, and tanks are just big target dummies, so you should not have any problems dueling them. Overall, Kitsu, in my opinion, is a solid A+. Next, we have Anna. Anna has a very solid early game. She has 240 damage autos when you land all 4 shots, which is very easy against mobs. She has a 3-second dash very early, which is much lower than any other character, and you should be able to escape given that there isn't any walls or anything like that for people to catch up to you. She's very oppressive against the right opponents at the early game. People who have weak early games, Anna can pretty much just rush up to them and auto them in the face, and usually she'll outdamage them. It's just, yeah. And the chase will make sure you can secure those early game kills as well. In terms of late game, she is not as strong as some of the other range characters. She has low range, which means you are more susceptible to poke, and you also really need that sword and cooldown in order to dodge a lot of the key abilities and to burst people. You'll have to play your footsies really well as Ana, and the lack of hard CC also makes her weaker late game compared to the other assassins, because you won't be able to stop some of the speedier folks, and you won't be able to interrupt some of the key ultimates. In terms of escape and chase, Ana is without a doubt the best person in the game for this. Her only weakness is walls, whether you're chasing or escaping. Maze-like areas will be very difficult for her. If someone turns around the corner, then you pretty much have no ability to hit them afterwards. And if someone jumps a wall, you'll have to take the long way around. But regardless, when you have a gold watch, your jump goes all the way down to 1 or 2 seconds, which is just incredibly short, and you can pretty much run down anybody you want, wall or not. And finally, dueling power. Ana essentially has no bad matchups. Every single character is beatable in a 1v1 scenario for Ana. Tanks literally can't catch you if you dash during their approach, and if you have fancy feet, you can dodge and run circles around range players. Zook and Kiddo are slightly trickier since they have zone control, but you can still outplay those matchups if you use your dash well. Ana is gonna be our first S tier character, in my opinion. Next we have Chuck. Chuck actually has a fantastic early game. He does 170 damage per autos that are very hard to miss, and he has 2 stuns early on to lock people down. If you have a teammate with you with any CC, the two of you guys can lock someone down and get an instant kill with no items. But the trade-off is that he does not have that good of a late game. Your damage does not scale well, and once people grab some damage, some boots, HP, or CD, your kill potential goes way down. Your jump and ultimate are very telegraphed and will likely need your opponent to either misplay or have their movement ability burned by someone else. Your role in the late game sort of becomes a meat shield and a threat for your teammate to poke and heal up. What you would do is you let your teammate do the poking, and when they get outpoked, you walk out in front, block all the damage for them, and then they will heal up and come back and poke some more. And you'll also act as a threat for the people trying to approach your low HP teammates. If they try to get greedy and try to execute your teammate, you will stun them to heavens come and your team will poke them down. In terms of escape and chase, Chuck is actually surprisingly good at fleet. He might actually be one of the best characters for running away. You wall hop, you press ultimate, which resets your cooldown, and you wall hop again will make it a very quick getaway in any areas that are very mazy. No characters out there besides Chuck can jump 2 walls at the same time, so you essentially have a free getaway there. And you add to that the speed boost from your ultimate means that most likely no one will ever be able to catch you. His chase, on the other hand, is not too great. Oftentimes when you jump, they will jump, and you're left with an option. You either walk up to them and get poked down, or you use your ultimate and get poked down. So not really much of a choice there. But still, just his escape makes him invaluable for placement points in ranked and reviving teammates. Finally, dueling power. Yeah, tanks are not great at dueling. Most ranged characters will dodge your jump and either move away or poke you down during your ultimate charge. And assassins will likely employ a hit and run strategy against you. But if people do decide to duke it out in melee range with you, you pretty much win every single time. So my overall analysis of Chuck is a solid B. Don't feel too bad though, because the next character is gonna be Sashimi. Sashimi has a good early game. Pretty much the same as Chuck, Sashimi has 3 CCs in her kit, has really high base damage, and can often kill someone with just 3 auto attacks early game. Your ultimate is also deceptively big and catch a lot of people by surprise, especially when they don't have mobility at the start. But on the flip side, Sashimi has a terrible late game. When all the ranged characters get their full build, they will poke you down with no mercy. And since most people have iframes in their kit, you are most likely not going to catch any of them with your slow abilities. Your one saving grace is that your ultimate is huge, so you might be able to catch an entire team in it and let the rest of your team finish them off. In terms of escape and chase, Sashimi has slightly more instantaneous chase than Chuck, since she can use her dash into her ultimate instantly, while Chuck needs to jump, charge ult, and then jump. However, since her dash needs to be charged up, it's too telegraphed to serve as any real threat in a fight, so 2 out of 5. And if you feel bad about that, well, dueling power is 1 out of 5. Probably the worst duelist in the entire game. If it's an open area, you might as well just give up. Just refresh the tab. Ranged characters will poke you out and assassins will hit and run you like crazy. Sashimi is someone who really needs her team and can serve as an amazing CC bot, but just try not to stray away from them. Overall for Sashimi is a unfortunate C. Next we have Kiddo. Now Kiddo is pretty similar to Kitsu. The early game damage is kind of lacking. He hits for 150 damage per bubble and it's gonna take a while to kill someone. However, he makes up for it with his Q damage hitting for a decent amount, 80 damage per tick with burn damage. And plus all his abilities are AoE, which lets him farm a large amount of camps at once to gear up faster. But in terms of late game, Kiddo is not really as good as some of the other longer range folks. Kiddo can make use of almost all items pretty well, and with a bit of tankiness and speed, Kiddo can be an absolute menace. You can go for an attack speed build that prioritizes dodging, or you can go for a attack damage build that prioritizes Q damage. Of the two, the Q damage is slightly better for team play since you can put it under someone who's being CC'd or use it to zone people away from the rest of your team. Now the reason he's only a 3.5 is because he is similar to Anna, where his range is not as good as some of the better pokers out there, and you have to play a lot of really good footsies in order to survive later on. Now in terms of escape and chase, Kiddo would need some items in order to outspeed some of the better chasers and escapers, but when he has them, he becomes incredibly sticky. By keeping up his auto attacks and his burns, he can make sure someone can never heal. But of course, he still doesn't have a wall hop, so that's gonna be an issue. And without any dashes, he can be very easily chain CC'd by a coordinated team. As a Kitsu, Kiddo is usually my first target for my ultimate because he's the only one who can't dash out of it. Now in terms of dueling power, Kiddo is really not too bad at solo fighting, but he needs you to really work for it. You have to land a lot of continuous delayed skill shot, which is a little bit more difficult against mobile characters, but luckily, you can put a Q on yourself and the shield blocks a lot of damage. This helps alleviate some of the weaknesses some of the other ranged characters has against assassins. Overall, I put Kiddo in B+. Now the next character is Zook, and Zook is probably the person that most top players agree on being the most OP in the game. Now while his early game left click damage might seem similar to Kitsu, 200 damage when he lands a direct rocket, it has two major advantages. His autos do splash damage, which allows you to easily farm multiple mobs at once, and his Q does 300 damage on a direct hit. This lets Zook farm up much faster and allows him to have a little bit more power for the early game fights as well. And similar to Kitsu, I also give Zook a 5 out of 5 for the late game. I would only put him slightly below Kitsu for late game fights because Kitsu can outrange and engage using E, letting a teammate go in and finish up. Zook is still incredibly strong and his poke is easier than Kitsu due to splash damage and the Q's homing ability. His E also serves as a great anti-engage tool for assassins jumping onto him. And compared to Kitsu, he's a little bit less reliant on damage items and can go cooldown and health to stay safe. In terms of escape and chase, it's very similar to Kitsu. The major differences are that Zook can flex into cooldown a little bit easier, Zook has a easier to use ultimate when getting chased, and his jump has a bigger AoE knockup. His chase is also slightly bettered by the fact that his explosives can slightly hit around corners, catching those people who like to make a lot of sharp turns. In terms of dueling power, Zook combines Kiddo's zone control with Kitsu's long-range poke, and he makes for an incredibly strong duelist character. It essentially removes a lot of the weaknesses either character has. Kiddo's abilities are shorter range and harder to land properly, while Zook has auto-aim and longer range poke. Kitsu is weak against aggro assassins with multiple gap closers, but Zook can just toss a minefield on himself. So obviously, Zook is gonna be an S tier character. Alright, moving on, we have Skinny. Skinny has a pretty alright early game. His early damage is pretty good, and space plus Q can do some big burst damage for both farming and ganking. His ultimate serves as a great get out of jail free card or as an execution early on. There's nothing too special to write home here, it's just very solid. And similarly, he has a very solid late game as well. Skinny scaling is nothing too outrageous. If you can approach a squishy without them hearing your invisibility, you can usually burst them down instantly. Skinny is the ultimate ambusher, but since the meta is kind of swinging towards health on every single character, it becomes a very risky playstyle. If you don't kill them with space Q auto E combo, then you pretty much left yourself open to be gunned down as all your mobility skills are down. Regardless though, the third party potential of a late game Skinny is still incredibly strong. And in terms of escape and chase, Skinny is definitely the best rat in all of BapBap. The jukes he can pull off with Invis is honestly incredible. For example, the easiest thing to do is to go forward, press space, and then move backwards or 90 degrees. Most people don't know where you went, so they're just gonna keep heading forwards. However, Skinny's chase is not the best, especially for an assassin. Skinny can third party really well, but in order to fully chase, you'll likely have to burn both your space and E, both having long cooldowns, which leaves you relatively stranded if things go south. In terms of dueling power, Skinny is actually not absolutely amazing at dueling. His damage is high, but if you don't have the damage to burst someone in one go, either because they're tanky or you lack the damage, you have to resort to a very awkward hit and run tactic that relies on the opponent messing up. So overall, I give Skinny a solid A-. And finally, we have Froggy. Now, Froggy has a fantastic early game. I would probably say he is the strongest character at the very beginning. He has 3 gap closers with iframes, which lets you chase, weave in and out, and dodge key abilities, while your strong and easy to land auto attacks will pretty much outduel most of the opponents at the very beginning. On top of that, Froggy can pretty solidly use every single item in the game, so you can just grab any random build and start running people down. But of course that is balanced around the fact that his late game is not nearly as strong. Range characters definitely outscale Froggy by the end, and Froggy will need to go into a reactionary role. You either need to wait for distracted enemies or your ranged teammate needs to poke them down first. He's still great and can outplay a lot of encounters, but you can't play as hyper aggressive. Now in terms of escape and chase, it pretty much boils down to Froggy versus Anna. They go toe in toe in terms of their escape and chase. Anna benefits from an open area while Froggy thrives from having a lot of terrain. Using wall hops and tonguing to terrain keeps Froggy super agile, and it's very difficult to get away from a good Froggy. The one benefit is that Froggy's abilities are a bit harder to aim, so you might be able to juke and dodge it. And finally, dueling power. Froggy is one of the best duelists out there for sure. Even if you were at a disadvantage, say it's 1v2 or you have lower health, you have 3 iframes, which allows you to dodge so many key abilities and still come out on top. You also have 2 CCs built into your kit to stop any charging abilities like Anna, Kitsu, or Chuck ults. So, very clearly, Froggy is gonna be another S tier. Now, I know what a lot of you guys are here for, so here you go. Feel free to take a screenshot, share it, go like, haha, I can't believe iHeartPie is so dumb, he put this character in this tier, blah blah blah. You know, tier list stuff. But overall, I think the game is pretty dang well balanced. You can pretty much play any character and you'll still be able to do well. The only outlier I would say is Sashimi, which needs a little bit more help. But regardless, you'll be fine playing most of the characters in the game. Anyways, that is it. I hope you guys enjoyed this BapBap tier list. If you did, make sure you guys hit the like and subscribe button. Once again, I spent a lot of time on this, writing the script and all that, trying to make a better video for you guys. So I hope it shows. I'll try to have more gameplay videos for you guys on the channel soon, so stay tuned for that. Until then, this has been iHeartPie. I'll see y'all next time. Ciao.